Welcome to Aging in Place Strategies and Answers with Linda Prio. Will it be possible to remain in my home as I age? Do I feel safe in my home? How do I figure out how much support I will need when my health needs start to change? What if I decide to move into a community instead? Which community will meet my needs now and in the future? Who will play a role in helping me with decision making? Do you ask yourself these same questions? Aging in Place Strategies and Answers can help you gain practical knowledge that will help you create your own Aging in Place roadmap. If you are already a care partner, a power of attorney, or in crisis mode with your Aging in Place strategy, you will learn what you need to know that you don't know. For over 20 years, I have been marketing Aging in Place services to clients and educating families and healthcare professionals in how to put aging in place strategies into place. When you utilize aging in place, you are allowed to choose where you want to live and make those decisions so that you can retain your quality of life. Welcome back to Aging in Place, Strategies and Answers. You know, in the fall, I mentioned to you listeners that I was going to have somebody on my podcast who could really speak to what is going on in the real estate market. I thought it would be great to get caught up on real estate trends and some changes that have taken place. And I don't know about you, but I always have this question in the back of my mind. Is it time to move? Do we start making the necessary changes that we need to do so that we can stay here and age in place successfully? Do we start thinking about right sizing and getting a smaller home, and what might be the reasons we might do that, and what might we find if we go out there and do a search? Or maybe, should I lease a property? Is that the right move for me or for you who are listening to me today? When my mother moved out of her home, we discussed owning a condo. And, the housing market and the real estate market really fluctuates. And at the time she was looking, I said, condos aren't really selling, Mom, and HOA fees are unpredictable. So she found a wonderful lease, and it was villa style living. And it didn't have the HOA fees, but she loved it. And it looked just like her home, only she didn't have any of the maintenance responsibilities, which was terrific. And I notice a lot of apartment complexes are going on up around my neighborhood and just about on every corner. And I know that many seniors are selling their houses and moving into an apartment or a lease type of relationship. I also have a friend who said, Linda, I sold my big old house, the one with the pool, where I was the pool boy and I was the maintenance guy. And he said, there's a lot to be said for calling a property manager and saying, I need this fixed. But today I have a seasoned professional with me today, and her name is Stephanie Parson. And I want to give you a little background on her because she has been in real estate for over 25 years, and she has so many awards and certifications. I'm not even bother to list them all, but you can find her as a Keller Williams broker, and I'm going to give you a few of them, though, just to let you know that you are in good hands today. Now, Stephanie's always worked in the housing industry. She did multifamily property management for over 20 years, and she supervised large apartment communities as well as an entire portfolio, including new construction. She is also a CPM, which is the highest designation from the Institute of Real Estate Management, and that is a certified property manager. She worked in corporate housing as well and did employee relocations for several years. But about 8 years ago, she wanted to get a different kind of certification, which is one of the reasons why I invited her on my podcast today. And that is a certified senior housing professional. And so that means that she is able to work with seniors and she is trustworthy and has gone through testing and training and to get this designation. So congratulations, Stephanie, on doing that. Would you say hello to my listeners and kind of tell us what led you into that next step to work with seniors?
Yeah, so I've actually been a realtor actively selling real estate for about 20 years. And about 8, 10 years ago, um, I decided that, well, I just realized I was working with a lot of older clientele. Um, and I enjoy working with them. And so I decided to actively pursue that niche, if you call it. And so I wanted to get some education on it. I am a big education nerd, educating myself. Now I work to educate other people as well.
Me too,
Um,
Stephanie.
yeah, yeah. So I decided to, I found this group, a Senior Real Estate Institute, and it was small, but it has been growing. It's a network of agents who've committed themselves to working with seniors and doing what is best for them. So we are knowledgeable in all different kinds of, I would say, housing. You talked about rentals, villas, there's retirement communities. So that we have a very good knowledge base of not only what those options are, but what they are specifically in our market. And so there's a big network across the US of other certified senior housing professionals. And so that's what I decided to do. And I would encourage anybody who actually needs a realtor, seek one of us out because we are different and we'll do the right thing. And we're very educated and um, diligent in helping seniors.
And I appreciate that because early in our married life, um, Gary and I were leasing an apartment and decided to move out early because we bought a home. And I asked the property manager, how much notice do I have to give you? And is there anything else I need to do? And she said, just give me a 30-day notice. She neglected to tell me that I needed to wait till the contract was over, which was a year rental. And so we got caught in this little litigation matter. And I
Mm-hmm.
learned a very long time ago that land contracts are very, very important and not to mess around with them. So
Mm-hmm.
I prefer to use a professional when professional guidance is needed, and I always advocate for that with my listeners. Is that if you want a job well done, get a professional, especially one that has gone through extra education, one that you can trust. It's so
Right.
important to have somebody that you can work with. So, listeners, Stephanie and I are going to be focusing on real estate as it pertains to seniors, since Stephanie is a senior housing professional. Now, Stephanie and I talked several months ago, and I said to Stephanie, I have just got to know what this lawsuit was about that I had heard of, something to do with real estate, I believe, commissions. And I would ask other realtors and they weren't really sure. I mean, it was just coming out and there was a lot of information and the ground had not settled yet. So is it okay if you could take a minute now and explain a little bit about the lawsuit, what it was about, where we are now, and what that really means to the person who might be thinking about hiring a real estate professional to help them in their property search and in buying their next property?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'd love to give a little, I guess, history on it and what it actually means to the consumers now. So the original complaint was filed back in 2019, and it was very close to home. So you and I are located in the St. Louis area. This was filed in the U.S. District Court of for the Western District of Missouri, which is Kansas City.
Oh, okay.
So that is where, that's where this suit took place at. The name of the lawsuit, it got changed over time, but basically it ended up being Burnett versus NAR being the National Association of Realtors.
Okay.
And it was a class action lawsuit. The claim was that realtors violated the Sherman Antitrust Act. And the verdict was that the defendants, NAR, were found liable for damages caused by engaging in a price fixing conspiracy.
How about that?
So now I will tell you that we as realtors know that we charge, typically we called it commission, for assisting people in selling their properties. And it was a percentage of the purchase price or a flat fee. Um, Back in, I want to say the mid 90s, National Association of Realtors adopted a rule that when you that in using a multiple listing service or the MLS, that's database that we as agents use of properties that are for sale, that required us to make a blanket unilateral offers of compensation, which means we would be when we would take a listing, when we're asked, what do we charge? We would quote this larger typical percentage. And that actually included a portion of that to be paid to the agent or brokerage that represents a buyer.
Yes.
Okay. So they were coupled together, okay, into this larger number. All right. Um, and it wasn't made clear, according to the lawsuit anyway, that commissions are negotiable and that consumers had options for that. Okay. I will tell you that some brokerages actually don't allow their agents to negotiate the commission. The brokerage sets the commission. Okay. Other brokerages, like the one that I'm affiliated with, we let agents run their business like a business. They make those decisions for
Okay.
themselves. But the actual litigation was that it wasn't made clear that it can be negotiable if the agent and their brokerage so allow.
Okay.
And so things that have changed specifically in our area is that they've they've decoupled the compensation. So when you hire a realtor now and the question is asked, what do you charge? They're only quoting you, or should only be quoting you, the percentage of for listing the property. The other side of it, typically there's an agent who represents the buyer on the other side. Um, that is an agreement between that buyer and their agent of compensation. In reality, what ends up happening is that when offers are written and delivered, to sellers to purchase their property, there's options to request that the seller still compensate or compensation to that other agent. Okay, it can
Yes.
be done a couple different ways. Um, so in the end, what the big change is for consumers is that um, there's going to be clearer language in contracts. And probably the biggest thing that people are surprised by is that we are now mandated that we have to enter into a written agreement with a buyer before actually showing them properties.
Yes.
Um, so that's the proper way of doing it. And so therefore it will be clear as to what they charge and who can be held responsible for, paying that compensation.
Yes, and that would be very surprising to someone who has bought and sold under the old standards where you never
Right.
saw those numbers. You just knew what what your fees were going to be on this on the seller side. Now, a word from our sponsor.
Do you want assisted living services but don't want to leave your home? Call Continuum at 314-863-9912. Our professional team has 20 plus years of experience and will help you create the perfect care solution that meets your current and future needs. Continuum supports independence at every stage of life. Call 314-863-9912 for a free consultation or visit us at continuumcare.com.
Let's return to part 1 of this podcast about real estate. So just to recap, if you're the buyer now, you want somebody to show you properties, you're going to have a written agreement and you're going to see what commission is going to be charged, what the fees are for that when that final transaction happens. And then is that negotiable or is that set? Is that fee negotiable or set by law or
Yeah,
by brokerage?
it is negotiable to the point of what that specific agent and or their brokerage allows.
Okay.
Okay. So it is negotiable.
Mm-hmm.
But if the agent has a policy that says, well, I run my business that this is my charge and I don't negotiate on it.
Right.
Okay. They have the right to do that.
Yes. Which makes
But
sense.
right. So it's all documented. It's a legal binding contract for an agent to represent you in a buying transaction.
Yes. Yes. And then how long would that agreement be for? Is there a
So
timeline on the buyer?
the agreements that we use locally, you can fill in whatever timeline that
Okay.
your policy is, how you run your business, or it can be for, it can't even be just for a day. It can be for specific properties that have been shown. So there's different ways to skin a cat. And I think most agents try to do what consumers are most comfortable with. We do recognize that sometimes we're potentially working with clients that you really don't have a relationship yet. Yet we are mandated to have you sign an agreement that says you're gonna be responsible for compensating us
Yes.
if we show you property and you end up buying that property. So talk with your agent, I guess, and if they are, in my opinion, a good agent, they're going to give you some options and say, I understand if you're not comfortable with obligating yourself for 6 months since, we've just met. A buyer's consultation is the way that I run my business so that we do have that opportunity to talk and get to know each other a little bit and talk about what they're looking for. Make sure we're a good match.
Yes.
'Cause the expectations are set and known at that point in time.
So that's good. So you've got some wiggle room, and the agent will educate you on your options. And just to kind of throw a little question out there, once somebody's signed an agreement and knowing that the inventory of properties has been a huge problem,
Yeah.
how long is it taking somebody to find a property on average, just as a guess, in our market?
It varies greatly depending upon how realistic those expectations are of the buyer. So a lot of time buyers will have a, champagne taste, but beer budget per se.
Yes, I have
Okay.
one of those.
I think we all do a little bit. But, we have to advise our clients and let them come to an understanding. And sometimes it's out there, showing them a few properties and potentially putting a few offers in to understand what the reality of the market is. So I would say those agents that take the time to do a buyer's consultation and really educate their buyers up front, provided there is inventory out there in the area and the price point they want, it should be, it could be showing, 5 or 6 properties. Okay.
Yes.
And it's not looking at hundreds of properties or anything like that.
Right. We
But
had
yeah, it can take, there may just not be something that in the area that you require that is in the budget, and then you're waiting for something to come on the market. But the people who truly are committed to buying, we're able to get them under contract pretty quickly. Yeah.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. But it protects, quite frankly, listeners, it protects the agent who is a professional running a business, feeding their family from, we had a friend who was an engineer and no property was ever going to measure up to his expectations. His wife was pulling her hair out. She wanted to get out of the big house. He was looking for a property that didn't exist, only in his mind, this perfect property. So there is that business relationship that needs to take place, in all honesty. So I like it, actually. So it's a good expectation to have. And if you're a professional, you understand how this is going to be beneficial to you. So I do thank you for explaining that to us. I think it's going to be very helpful for my listeners. And so when we start that process, we're not going to be surprised. We're going to be saying, okay, yes, I remember. I heard Linda's podcast, Stephanie Parson from Keller Williams, talked about this. I know what you're talking about now. Now, this is what I can do. And let's have a really frank chat, because I got really educated on Linda's podcast. Listeners, thank you for joining me today and listening to my interview with real estate specialist Stephanie Parson. Please join me again for part 2, where you will continue to learn more about what you need to know if you are considering making a real estate transaction in 2025. Thank you for joining me today. Please remember that this podcast is intended as guidance and not advice. Share this podcast with friends and family who are currently in crisis mode, or with people who would like to start developing their own roadmap for aging in place. Listeners, if you would like a deeper dive into a topic discussed during a podcast, please subscribe to Aging in Place Strategies and Answers, where you will be able to access premium content. Or if you would like to suggest a topic for this podcast, please contact me at linda.agingstrategies@gmail.com. As always, I value the time you spend with me.